Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Welcome to Help Stop the Genocide in American Ghettos podcast. I'm your host, Emmanuel Barbie. I am the founder, president, and CEO of GERCAM, the Grassroots Community Activist Movement. I created this platform to discuss cultural issues, political issues, and social issues using an Afrocentric perspective. I interview activists, authors, entrepreneurs, and musicians. Some of my critics tell me that my introductions are too long. So I try to be mindful, to my listeners and things like that because you know all of us are different. So my suggestion to them is to I recommend that you go to my Medium transcript, which is located in the comment section below this audio podcast. Click on the link, then scroll down to show and prove, and then I recommend that you just check out all the videos. You know, I'm just trying to be saying it in a nice way. Those of you who are critical thinkers like myself that really want to understand what this is all about, then please just bear with me. Follow along with this presentation. Um, that's the best I can tell you. Um, so, with that being said, if you are new to this podcast, or if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, then please do so now. Be sure to tap the information, or sorry, be sure to tap the notification bell and alert when we upload a new video. Please let us know in the comment section below this audio podcast where are you listening to us from. Also let us know what's happening in your country, your state, and or your city, and make arrangements with me to come on this platform so that way we can discuss it in real time. Any type of issues that's going on in your country and things like that. We are a global community and we want to keep our listeners informed about what's going on with Black people and African people throughout the diaspora and also on the African continent. I'd like to I would like for us to grow this platform to 500,000 strong, and also for us to get this film project fully funded and made so that way we can use the proceeds from the film to purchase property in Chicago, Illinois, within the low income Black community, as well as in the middle class Black community, and become an economic base within the Black community. Eventually, in God's timing, we will be hosting African tours, Caribbean tours, and South American tours. So that way we can move beyond cyberspace and make our presence known in cities and countries around the globe. On this platform, we share new news and social commentary on a variety of topics ranging from politics to social justice issues. I provide thoughtful, provoking views and details. I provide receipts that support my statements. I noticed the biggest YouTubers use some of our talking points, and hey, it is what it is. I give authentic commentary that speaks to that speaks to my passion for shining a light on truth and exposing lies and liars alike. I have zero tolerance for foolishness and disrespect. So we ain't gonna have that kind of drama over here at all. So on this platform, we are more than just talk. We will put boots on the ground and do what we can to help improve the social conditions of our people who want more out of life and who also want to become GERCAM members. I'm not here for entertainment. I'm here to recruit brave and smart Black people and African people to work with me directly in building and running Gurkai of Chicago. That stands for the Grassroots Community Activist Institute of Chicago. I'm giving notice to everyone on my Facebook page, my Instagram page, my TikTok page, and my LinkedIn page, as well as my X page. If you do not care about solving Black issues or solving African issues, then please delete me off your friends list and go on about your business. That's real. Disclaimer: this content is for educational and informational purposes only. It is based on public available reports and verified media sources. We fully comply with YouTube's community guidelines. We do not promote violence, hate, or misinformation in any form. This podcast is available in two forms: audio and also as a written text, in order for us to reach our audience. Help Stop the Genocide in American Ghettos podcast is our Black media component. I would like to encourage my listeners to subscribe to my Medium transcript. There you can follow along during this presentation. I provide my Medium transcript in the comment section below this audio podcast. If you are a Black artist, African artist, such as an author, comedian, poet, musician, or entrepreneur, then make arrangements with me to come on this platform so that way you can promote your books, your business, your music, your jokes. And if you have a small ministry, then you're more than welcome to share a 30-minute sermon with my listeners from the global community. After the show, I offer incentives to my guest speakers by teaching them how to create their own podcast, YouTube channel, and get it monetized, as well as assist them with creating a free Wix website. If you don't know how to use StreamYard or Zoom, then make arrangements with me, and I would teach you how to use both of them so that way you can come on this podcast or platform and promote your products and services. I am available. Let me look at my calendar again on this. I'm available Tuesday, August 25th, Thursday, August 27th, Friday, August 28th, Sunday, August 30th, all between 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. American Central Time. If you are not on my Facebook page or my LinkedIn page, TikTok page, or X page, then I recommend that you go to my YouTube page and click on the link in the comment section. Look for my revised Linktree page, and those three social media sites that I just mentioned. Send me a friend request on there, along with your email address, and I will email you everything that I do online. I encourage all of my listeners to please purchase my ebook. Read my story for yourself. If you agree with my vision and plan to help improve the social conditions in our low-income Black community, then you will automatically become a GERCAM member. Doesn't matter what city, state, or what country you live in. This business is international, and it's going to be international, but right now we're online, and I'm trying to move us from behind a computer. Again, I'm online to recruit. I wrote my revised book in order to recruit my readers. So if you agree with my vision and plan, then you automatically become a GERCAM member. Make arrangements with me to come on this platform so that way we could talk about it. If you have things that you didn't understand in the book, I'll be more than happy to explain it. And most of all, for us to get more people involved. more black people, more African people. But we want legitimate people that's on the up and up. And we want to separate ourselves from, I would just say, con artists, degenerates, pedophiles, hardened criminals, off code Negroes, urban terrorists. Those people don't mean us any good. Um, it is what it is. It's not that we're thinking that we're better. We just got standards over here. That's all. And we gonna nip that stuff in the bud real fast over here. And when we have that physical building. So we will let people know our location, where we at, and all that. Um, but at this time, I just want to say it doesn't matter how bad I would like to get this business up and running without financial support from the Black grassroots and the global African family, then I am unable to do my God given assignment, which is to build the best Black Christian business within the United States of America, and that is Cacao Chicago, with the help of GRCAM members. I encourage Black content creators and African content creators who have a large following. Please allow me to come on your platform so that way I can speak to your audience about my revised book and my film project. After all, this Christian business is for Black millennials and Generation Z. Um, I don't want the brand and vision to die in America. I am pushing this vision to the Black world. This is my contribution to Africa's rising. This year, we are determined to get this film project fully funded and made so that way we can get our story on the big screen and reach the Black masses and let them know who we are and what we're trying to do for our people who identify as descendants of American slaves slash freedmen. Upcoming events Monday, August 31st, we have guest speaker Reverend Peace. I have to have to sound out this last name, so bear with me. I believe it's pronounced Bear East Bamis Bamisser from Nigeria. Saturday, August 29th, 2026, we're hosting our monthly virtual town hall meeting. So that's going to be this coming Saturday. I encourage 5 people from my Facebook page, my Instagram page, LinkedIn page, TikTok page, or from my X page to come forth and to be on the panel. So that way we can discuss our monthly theme, and that would be navigating the future with AI and tech, moving the Black community forward. Where YouTube Live when Saturday, August 29th, 2026. Time 2 p.m. American Central Time, 3 p.m. Canadian Time, 8 p.m. West African Time, 9 p.m. South African Time, 10 p.m. East African Time, and 8 p.m. UK Time. Okay? If you are unable to participate on our monthly virtual town hall meeting, no problem. Then please listen to the replay. Leave a public comment about the topic in the comment section below this audio podcast. Most of all, please share this audio podcast with your friends on all social media sites you are on. This will help get the ball rolling. Title of this presentation: 6 Murdered Sunday as Chicago weekend shooting leaves 25 victims. America's 40 trillion in debt, what it means for Africa, Brazil, and the Caribbean. Judge deny Carmelo Anthony's appeal for new trial. Our first topic: 6 murder Sunday as Chicago weekend shooting leaves 25 victims. So We always talk about what other groups of people are doing to Black people, but we rarely talk about the negative things that we do to each other. I read an article from CWB Chicago entitled, quote, Six Murdered Sunday as Chicago Weekend Shooting Leaves 25 Victims, unquote. To read the full article, just go to my Medium transcript located in the comment section below this audio podcast. Click on the link, then scroll down to show and prove. I also watched a news report on ABC 7 Chicago entitled, quote, Seven teenagers shot, one fatally in separate shooting across Chicago. Police says, unquote. To watch the video clip, just go to my Medium transcript located in the comment section below this audio podcast. Click on the link, then scroll down to show and prove. Finally, I watched a news report on ABC 7 Chicago um, entitled, quote, Family Seeks Answers After Mom of Three gunned down near the original Maxwell Street. Just devastating, unquote. To watch the full video clip, just go to my Medium transcript located in the comment section below this audio podcast. Click on the link, then scroll down to show and prove. On Sunday across Chicago, there were shootings which had 25 victims. That's a mass shooting, ladies and gentlemen. A mass shooting entails four or more victims in a single event. That's just in Chicago alone. In every inner city across the United States of America, there is a mass shooting that takes place every weekend. This is why I named this platform, quote, Help Stop the Genocide in American Ghettos, unquote. My focus is not on Chicago alone, but all inner cities where my people, Black Americans who identify as descendants of American slaves/freedmen, are trapped in American ghettos. That's the low income Black community. I never imagined that I would still be on first base 34 years later. That's unacceptable, Black America. It really is. On behalf of the grassroots community activist movement, our hearts and prayers goes out to the victims, to the victim's family. Rest in peace to all those people who lost their lives over senseless violence. To those who survive, we pray that you have a speedy recovery. In Jesus' name. We have to talk about the pull ups that need to happen in our low income Black neighborhoods, starting here in Chicago. If you think, if you think as a Black person in these neighborhoods just going around terrorizing the neighborhood where our children and grandparents cannot walk outside, stand on the porch without the Pookie and Ray Rays acting a fool, then you think again. 25 people shot in one weekend, six people died. That's a mass shooting. Notice these Black politicians focus on everything else except these type of issues that I talk about, what I've written about, trying my best to get this business up and running. 34 years, ladies and gentlemen, and again, I'm still on first base. This is so doggone ridiculous. And that's why I'm reaching out to African immigrants across the United States of America. Please read my ebook. That's all I'm asking you to do. I know if you ran across Black Americans, look how they treat me. I'm a Black American. And I'm trying to build something positive and productive that's going to create jobs in those low income Black communities. But I lack the support. wasting money. 16 years I've been paying on the business title. Still don't have anyone on my advisory board. But again, this is, I didn't ask for this. This is what my creator placed in my heart and mind to do. He didn't bless me with the capital, but that's how come I wrote the book, in order to generate capital, ladies and gentlemen. Help me get my ebook on that bestsellers list. That's going to help put me in a better position financially so I can hire Black people, African people, and others. That's how this works. I didn't write the book for it to remain on Amazon. I don't have the virtual store just to have a virtual store. I'm trying to sell items, trying to do something positive and productive for our people. But like I say, we got to get it started here in America first. That's for credibility. That's all. And my business will be, because of the foolishness I had to endure for the past 34 years, my business will be membership based. If you're not a Gurkam member, I ain't fooling with you. It's just that simple. Let me get back to my topic. As I mentioned in my revised book, I grew up in those rough areas, and I decided to do something about it, the situation, by going to college. And I did, graduated from college graduate. Uh, I know how to create nonprofits and for-profit businesses. That's why I wrote my book, in order trying to recruit brave and smart people that's going to read what I have to say. That's what this is all about, ladies and gentlemen. I'm doing my best to recruit brave and smart Black people and African people, but Black Americans beyond Chicago, because I can't reach people here. It is what it is. That slave mentality is really strong. Heck, it's run deep even in my family. My family members tell me, "Oh, Emmanuel, you should leave all that Black stuff alone and get a real job that's code for work for the white man." Anybody tell me that garbage, we will remain strangers for life, and that's real. Because during Jim Crow, our Black people created the Black Wall Street. And we can do that stuff, but again, we got to connect with other like-minded Black people. Bottom line, all of us don't have that ambition. A lot of us, our people, want to remain on that slave mentality, or stay on that plantation. It is what it is. You just have to leave them alone. Things is finna get worse in this country, and that's what I'm gonna talk about. In my second topic, about that deficit. 40 America now is in $40 trillion in debt. So, um, so I'm trying to recruit brave and smart Black people, brave and smart African people. That's going to help me build and run the Grassroots Community Activist Institute of Chicago. I want to make sure that Sister Renee will be well taken care of. She's been working with me behind the scenes for 14 years, and I appreciate her big time. She's family oriented and stuff like that. I'm not close with my family like that. Read my story, you'll see why. But I have a love for uh, Black Americans that want more out of life, that have ambition. I don't fool with the Pookie and Ray Rays. It is what it is. Over here, we're about raising the bar, not lowering it. Over here, we are going to do the best that we can to help clean up the community. I don't. I want to encourage my members to want more out of life, become um, black middle class, so that way you don't have to live in those high crime, gang, and drug infested communities. It is what it is. Um, those communities are really a death trap. It's not a good place to raise children, especially in this day and age. It's getting worse. And again, that was all by design. That's what I talk about in my revised book. That's what we're gonna do our best to work with people that want more out of life, like I say. Um, but my business is not going to just be limited to the black ghetto. We also want to make a strong connection with our brothers and sisters from the black middle class community, because they're the ones that's going to help me be able to be in a position to give back to our brothers and sisters that's trapped in the black ghettos or the low income black community. So we're going to do both, make our presence known. Um, that's all I'm trying to do before we cut and run and bring this business over to the African continent. So, um, so the hidden agenda for Black people who reside in the low income Black communities um, is urban genocide, physical as well as political genocide, orchestrated by the white supremacist financial elites. Um, and that happened because all the gains our grandparents made during the civil rights era, and now Black Americans think that, oh, hey, we have arrived. A lot of Black Americans have become Americanized, have developed a narcissist type of attitude, meaning I got mine, you get yours, and the individualism, that's what they into, and that's again um, a narcissist type of behavior, and so that's what's making things really rough. And like I said, I just do the best we can. That's all we can do. And anyway, the most violent communities are the low income Black community, because they lack financial stability. And so that's where you're gonna have you'll see a lot of I would say financial crimes take place. Um, the white supremacist financial elites divided Black Americans based on our social class. They allowed the Black middle class and the Black upper class to relocate to the white suburbs. And that made the Black community vulnerable, and they flooded our community with, and you could, do the research on this, so that way, you know, you'll know that I'm on up and up with you on that. So they flooded our communities with drugs, guns, and liquor stores, so that way we can unalive each other. Just that these are just some dirty type of people. It's just rough, and the racism on top of it. So, um, so we further, as Black people, we further divide our racial group based on religion and political affiliation. So even though this is a Christian business, I'm open to those that's just secular, but long as you don't step to us, with being a devil worshiper and all that kind of foolishness that's offensive. I ain't dealing with that up in here at all. So, anyway, they created the 13th Amendment as a way to keep slavery alive and well, but it's in the back door. But they, with the 13th Amendments, this has given rise to mass incarceration, which helps the private prison industry. They secretly promoted the Negro Project, known as eugenics, um, by a lady named, and I put her, wrote about her in my book too, um, Margaret Sanger. Their objective was to extinct the black race in America. I'm just saying, this is who and this was before my time. So, like, with Cam, like I say, I just want us to create our own business, not begging, or complaining about the white man and the government. We'll just do the best that we can, but we gotta heal first and foremost, big time. This is why it's taken so doggone long, because this is spiritual warfare at its best, and this is just some serious stuff, very serious. In my book, I call it Perfect Genocide. The best way to rid of your undesirable population is by redlining them, and that's what they have done to us. That's why the community is still deep, deep. How to pronounce the word? Um, um, it's on the tip of my tongue. Deplapitated or deplapitated. But bottom line, it's just like a third world country, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, it's not. It's just horrible. But that's why I want to bring the business over there to turn that stuff around. You know, main thing is to get especially our young black youth, get them, encourage them to get off the streets, encourage them to get out of gangs, use their time and talents and skills um, in this business. And through this business, we will pay them to be in our Black empowerment films, so that way they can feed their families and pay their bills. We will also offer associate's degrees and I would say vocational training. So the Cal of Chicago we're gonna do more than just focus on one area. We're gonna focus on the whole 9 yards. So we want to strengthen the black family. We want to have offer child care and all that stuff. We want to meet the need of the family, things that the community wants. We're gonna do our best to help improve those social conditions in the low income black community through this business. Um, so um, genocide, I'm going to say politically, is for what the white supremacist financial elites want is for black Americans to be dependent on a political party that only offers symbolism, no substance. So they want those political parties to practice benign and neglect. And that's not cool at all. And that's how come I encourage, uh, I would say, GCAM members, the people I've been talking to for the longest in my groups. We have to demand economic tangible from these black politicians. But bottom line, if they don't want to give it to you, then don't vote for them. It's just that simple. You know, um, the white supremacist financial elites flooded our urban areas with unhealthy foods. This is why they call it a food desert. Um, they they put certain foods in certain neighborhoods um, by people's zip codes. Do the research. Trump talks about sending in the National Guards. The mayor is against that. So I think that we need to do pull ups. That's what I suggest. We got to pull up on ourselves too, meaning we have to hold ourselves accountable. I don't like reporting about these type of stories, but hey, it comes with the territory, and that's how come I use the word genocide, because you cannot sugarcoat genocide. It is what it is. That's why a lot of people don't want to really come on my show. It is what it is. We keep it authentic over here. We don't sit up here and be playing games. And like myself, I'm gonna keep it authentic. I ain't gonna sit up here and be faking no funk, trying to get people to like me. It is what it is. You know, I don't associate with people that ain't about Jack. That's all. That's just how it is with me. Everybody will be screened. Everybody. Because I don't know who's, you know, our our hidden enemy. I don't know who's the urban terrorists and all that kind of stuff when I come to the inner cities. So you know, everybody's just going to be treated the same, bottom line. And we want to let con artists know that there is consequences up in this business. That's just how it is. It's not just about Chicago, but I want to make Chicago a model for other cities around the country. And like I say, once we get it popping here in Chicago, I've done my, I did the best I could to help my people. 34 years of my life. I want to bring my business over to the African continent, work with African families that want more out of life. That's what I want to do. And that's what I'm trying to do. It's disingenuous for us to talk about pull ups on Latinos, Asians, and everybody else while ignoring the things that's happening in our own community. This is a us problem. This is a village problem. We don't, when we don't give it our full attention, we are complacent or uh, we become desensitized. Now, I'm not advocating for physical violence, but the pull up needs to be done so that way the Pookie and Ray Rays them know that we're serious and we own business. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to put that out there. Um, because we should never have to see articles like this saying that six people um, lost their life in one day, and the whole weekend 25 victims were harmed by urban terrorists. That's not cool at all. I'm just saying. Please leave a public comment about the topic in the comment section below this audio podcast and share with your friends on all social media sites you're on. This will help get the ball rolling. Our second topic, America's 40 trillion in debt, what it means for Africa, Brazil, and the Caribbean. In this episode, we explain why the dollar gives America extraordinary borrowing power, the growing 1 trillion interest rate, and why America's debt could have major consequences for Africa, Brazil, and the Caribbean, and the global economy as well. Finally, family, I came across an article from writers entitled, quote, U.S. debt crosses 40 trillion threshold after doubling under Trump and Biden, unquote. So I tried to pull it up. I pulled it up earlier, and the article was fine, but when I pulled it up, when I started my presentation, they're talking about they want me to subscribe, so they're trying to kind of hustle me. And right now, I'm on a shoestring budget. I can't be doing all that stuff. So I found another article. It's going to say the same thing. So, I'm going to share that with you all once I finish with this presentation. We're going to go through some of these videos. So that way, that's like my receipts to back up, everything I'm saying. So to watch the video clip, just go to my Medium transcript located in the comments section below this audio podcast. Click on the link, then scroll down to show and prove. From my understanding, America is now 40 trillion in debt. Now, I want you to just stop and think about that number for a minute. 40 trillion. The richest and most powerful country on earth owes more money than any country in history. And somehow it is still borrowing. It is still pending. The investors around the globe are still lending money. We all know that if an African nation accumulated nearly half of this debt, the World Bank and the IMF would be putting pressure about borrowing costs, all kinds of negotiations, austerities, and potentially default would be put in place, but not America, which crosses 40 trillion this week. And that is because America has something that no other country has, the extraordinary privilege of sitting at the center of the global financial system. There are signs that all this debt is becoming increasingly expensive. America is now spending roughly 1 trillion a year just on interest rate alone, while investors are demanding higher returns to keep lending Washington money. The question is, how does a country get 40 trillion in debt? And who exactly does America owe all this money to? What happens if the world stops lending money to the United States of America? If that happens, this won't be an American issue. It will become a global issue. On this platform, we center Africa and the Black world in today's geopolitics. We cut through the headlines, connecting the dots, and breaking down stories sharply, shaping our world. Let's start with the number $40 trillion. According to the U.S. Treasury, America's total national debt officially crossed 40 trillion this week for the very first time in history. When Donald Trump first entered the White House in January 2017, the debt was under $20 trillion, meaning in less than a decade, America's debt has doubled. America crosses 39 trillion less than 5 months ago, and now it's at 40 trillion. The first question is, how can a country possibly owe this much money? Every year, the U.S. government collects money through taxes and other revenues. And every year it spends money on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, defense, infrastructure, federal workers, and government programs. America is spending more money than it brings in. America gets extra money from loans it borrows, which is called the budget deficit. America borrows the difference by selling U.S. Treasury securities. Investors give the U.S. government money, and America promised to repay with interest. And this happens year after year. When we say America owes 40 trillion, who exactly does America owe? Is it China, Japan? It is American banks. It is the Federal Reserve. The answer, all of above. The debt is spread across millions of investors and institutions, governments, accounts, and countries around the world. About 32.3 trillion is debt held by the public. The remaining 7.8 trillion is what is called intra-governmental debt. For example, programs like Social Security collects money and invests some of their surplus in treasury securities. The treasuries then use that money somewhere but still owes it back to those government trust funds. So in a sense, America owes part of this 40 trillion to itself. But but the much bigger portion, the 32 trillion held by the public from American pension funds, the bank and mutual funds, insurance companies, the Federal Reserve, and individual investors, the foreign countries and investors. Japan is actually one of the largest foreign holders of U.S. government debt. China owes hundreds of billions of dollars in treasuries. Governments and investors across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, they aren't lending money, American money, as charity. They're buying something called U.S. Treasury security. The U.S. Treasuries have historically been considered most among the safest investment in the world. America is 40 trillion in debt. It is adding trillion-dollar deficit and is spending around 1 trillion a year just making interest rates alone on the money that is already borrowed. America controls the currency at the center of the global financial system, and that gives the US the extraordinary financial privilege that helps explain how a country can accumulate 40 trillion in debt and still have investors lining up to lend more. The dollar isn't just America's currency, it is the world's dominant currency. Countries around the world hold enormous amount of their reserves in dollars. Global economy like oil are largely priced and traded in dollars. International businesses use dollars to settle transactions. Banks need dollars. Government needs dollars. Investors needs dollars. And according to the IMF, the dollar still accounts for roughly 57% of the world's allocated foreign exchange reserves. That gives America an extraordinary advantage because when countries and institutions accumulate dollars, they need somewhere safe to put them. One of the most important places is U.S. government debt. They buy secure they buy Treasury securities. American position at the center of the global financial system creates enormous demand for the very thing that America needs to keep producing debt. For example, if the Ghanaian government suddenly lose value against the dollar, Ghana's debt would not disappear. It actually becomes more expensive to repay. America doesn't have that problem with most of its federal debt. America borrows in its own currency. It owes dollars. It collects taxes in dollars. And the Federal Reserve controls the monetary system that produces dollars. America can print $40 trillion, and doing so could be viewed as reckless and trigger inflation, weakening confidence in the dollar, and potentially drive interest rates higher. America has financial flexibility that most countries simply do not have, and that privilege has helped Washington run an debt, enormous deficits for decades without experiencing the kind of immediate debt crisis that could crash a smaller economy. The world needs the current currency that America controls. And because the world needs dollars, there's enormous global demand for dom, dom, ugh, denominated assets, including American government debt. In other words, America can spend more than it collects, borrow the difference, and much of the world is still willing to finance it. America still has to pay interest to convince people to hold all of those treasury securities. The cost of carrying America debt is exploding. 25 years ago, when the country announced good numbers, interest rates went down because we had a stronger country. Now, when we announce good numbers, the better they are, the worse it is for interest rates. It's a very unfair system. And I've said this for a long time. When our country does well, interest rates should go down. They should drop interest rates because it means we have a strong country and it's all based on credit. American taxpayers have to pay interest on its debt. And right now, that interest bill is exploding. The US government is now spending roughly 1 trillion a year just serving its debt, not paying down the 40 trillion, not building roads, not funding schools, not providing health care, not strengthening the military, just paying the interest rate on money that America already owes. And that interest has more than doubled since 2020. In fact, interest has now become one of the largest expenses in the entire US federal budget. During the first 10 months of the fiscal year, interest costs actually surpassed Medicare, making interest the second largest federal line item behind Social Security. For years, America benefited from extremely low interest rates, and Washington could borrow a lot of money cheaply. But interest rates have risen, and when old government debts mature, the Treasury often has to issue new debt to replace it, except now that new debt may come with a much higher interest rate. Today, America has crossed 40 trillion in debt. Investors are demanding higher returns to lend the government money for long periods. The yield on America's 30-year treasury bond climbed to around 5.3% this week, its highest level in nearly 2 decades. America's entire borrowing machine depends on investors continuing to buy these treasury securities. More debt means more interest rate. More interest rates mean more government spending. More spending means bigger deficits, and bigger deficit means borrowing more, which adds even more debt. According to Congressional Budget Office projects, annual net interest could costs could climb to roughly 2 trillion within the next decade if current policy continues. The question isn't whether America can write a $40 trillion check. The question is whether American debt keeps growing faster and faster while the cost of maintaining that debt consumes an increasingly largely share of the government's budget. This is where the problem of borrowing occurs. Washington accounting begins reaching into the lives of ordinary American citizens and eventually the rest of the world. Because when the US government has to borrow trillions of dollars every year, it doesn't borrow that money in isolation. It is competing for capital with other governments around the world. And what happens in the US Treasury market will ripple through interest rate, currencies, and borrowing costs around the world, including Africa, Brazil, and the Caribbean. This is where America's 40 trillion debt becomes everybody else's problem because the US Treasury market doesn't operate in a vacuum. It sits at the center of the global financial system. Remember, US government debt is considered one of the safest investment in the world. When America started offering investors higher returns to lend money, that can change the calculation everywhere else. For example, like nations like Ghana, Kenya, or Jamaica need to borrow internationally to finance their infrastructure, refinance old debts, or cover government spending. They already have to pay a premium because investors consider lending to them riskier than lending to America. This is one of the greatest ironies of the global financial systems. For years, we've watched countries go through debt restructuring, austerity programs, and negotiation with the IMF because their debt becomes unsustainable. In contrast, we see America sitting at the center of this financial system itself. America now owes 40 trillion in debt. The question arises, why American can get away with this but African countries can't? The answer, not all debt is created equal. American borrows overwhelmingly in a currency that it controls. Their enormous global demand for the dollar currency. Its treasury market is massive and liquid, and investors still overwhelmingly believe that the US government will repay them. An African country borrowing internationally often doesn't have those same advantages. If its currency collapse, its dollar debt can become dramatically more expensive. For investors lose confidence, capital can leave. It if it cannot refinance debt, then that will create a financial crisis. And so the lesson here should not be that America has 40 trillion in debt. Therefore, African countries should borrow whatever they want. The lesson here is that American power isn't simply about how much money it has. It's about the financial system it has at the center of the dollar, the treasury market, the Federal Reserve, the debt of American capital markets, and decades of global confidence in American institutions. Together, Those things give Washington room to borrow on a scale that would be unimaginable for most countries. But here's the question that nobody wants to answer. What the spending limit? Because 40 trillion hasn't broken the system. Investors are still buying American debt. The dollar is still the world's dominant reserve currency, and there is no evidence that America is suddenly about to go bankrupt anytime soon. But the financial collapse is coming sooner than later because the debt and the deficit keeps growing, and almost importantly, the increased rate keeps growing too. Perhaps the real warning isn't that America has reached 40 trillion. It's that America appears to have no clear plan to stop at 40 trillion. And if the world's biggest borrower keeps needing more and more money from the same global financial system, eventually we have to ask how much is too much. The dollar is still the dominant global reserve currency. U.S. treasuries are still considered among the world's safest assets, and investors around the world are still lending to America. But the financial collapse of the United States of America is coming. This topic is a warning sign that America's ability to carry 40 trillion in debt ultimately depends on something that cannot be taken for granted. Confidence in U.S. Treasury bonds and ultimately confidence in the U.S. dollar itself. In contrast, BRICS is an intra governmental organization of majoring emerging na- national economies. BRICS comprise of 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, South Africa. There have certainly been proposals and discussions about alternatives to the dollar. BRIC countries have been exploring ways to trade more in their own currencies, build alternative payment systems, and reduce the number of transactions that have to pass through the dollar. The bloc inaugurated summit was held in 2009. They adopted the acronym BRICS and formed an informal diplomatic group where their governments could meet annually and form summits and coordinate multilateral policies. BRICS has implemented initiatives that could reform the global financial system, such as the new development bank, the BRICS contingent reserve arrangement, BRICS pays. BRICS has also advanced de-dollarization to reduce the use of US dollar as a reserve currency. In its first 15 years, BRICS has established almost 60 intra-group institutions and an extensive network, including think tanks and dialogues. Some commentators consider BRICS the alternative to the G7 and a major political force in the global international order. Others describe it as an incoherent affiliation of desperate countries centered on increasing anti-Europe and anti-American objectives. BRICS has received both praise and criticism from numerous commentators and world leaders. The bloc has since expanded further, adding several new members states in recent waves to form an expanded coalition offered often referred to as BRICS Plus. According to BRICS website, their goal and purposes global influence designed to increase the geopolitical and economic voice of the global south. Counterbalance aimed to provide an alternative to Western dominant international structures like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. Financial initiatives establish the new development bank to fund infrastructure and sustainable development projects in emerging nations. Trade, encouraging trade using local members' currency rather than relying heavily on the US dollar. For example, India Central Bank has proposed linking BRICS countries' digital currency easier, a system that could reduce reliance on the dollar. China has been pushing let me see, I think it's pronounced the yuan, 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 further into international trade and finance. China has also dramatically reduced its direct reported holdings of U.S. government debt. China held more than 1.3 trillion in U.S. Treasury, but today the number is around six 633 billion. China itself faces enormous obstacles if it wants the yen to seriously challenge the dollar. Countries are thinking about alternatives, and this is why I think Africa should pay very close attention to what is happening in Washington, D.C., because America's greatest financial advantage is something that African countries and Caribbean nations generally don't have. That is, American can borrow its own currency. Many African and Caribbean nations can only borrow internationally using someone else's currency. This means Africa and Caribbean nations are exposed to decisions being made thousands of miles away from them at the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve. And that's also why the bigger conversation about the dollar matters. When other emerging economies talk about conducting more trade in their local currency or creating alternative payment systems, they're planning, thinking about reducing their dependency on foreign financial systems whose rules and conditions they don't control. The answer isn't simply let's replace the dollar with the yen, because then you're replacing dependency on another foreign currency. I believe the bigger question is how can Africa build a better financial power of its own? How can African countries deepen their own capital markets? How can African finance more African trade using African currencies? How do we mobilize African pension funds, savings, and institutional capital toward African development? How can we strengthen African currencies and African economies so that every time interest rates increase in America, African governments can avoid the financial consequences? These questions and more is what I want to talk about when I come to Africa and speak behind closed doors with African government officials. Before I step foot on the continent, I need African immigrants within the United States of America to please stand up. Those of you from Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Uganda, we will also expand to West Africa. Stand up, those of you from Liberia, Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Nigeria. Stand up, African immigrants from South Africa and Angola. All I am asking you to do is please purchase my ebook, Read My Story for Yourself. If you agree with my vision and plan to help improve the social conditions in the low income Black community, then please make yourself known to me. I provide my email address in the book. You could talk to me directly. Truth be told, I am unable to reach Black American, especially Black Chicagoans, due to this slave mentality within Black society. It is what it is. 34 years of me being overlooked and rejected just because I want to build a positive Black business that will help improve the lives of our Black youth who are trapped in American ghettos is long enough. I am also reaching out to Black Americans beyond Chicago across the United States of America. Please purchase my ebook and read my story for yourself. If you agree with my vision and plan to help improve Black America, then you automatically become a GERCAM member. Help me get my ebook on that bestsellers list so that I can be put in a better position financially to hire Black people, African people, and others. And that's real, ladies and gentlemen. Together, Black Americans and African immigrants who become GERCAM members will assist me in building the best Black Christian business within the United States of America, GERCAI of Chicago. When I come to Africa, we are going to expand GERCAI to 10 African nations, as mentioned above. I don't want to come to Africa empty handed. I want to bring economic tangibles in the form of job creation for GERCAM members and their immediate family, as well as for the locals. America isn't powerful simply because America is rich. America is powerful because much of the world's financial architects run through systems that America controls: the dollar, treasuries, American capital markets, the Federal Reserves. And until Africa builds a greater financial independence, decision made inside that system will continue to affect the cost of financing Africa's development. 40 trillion is America's debt, but the consequences of how America managed that debt will travel far beyond America. And that is why Africa and the rest of the world should be paying very close attention. And that and then there's another important point, critical point that we can't miss here. America can borrow on its incredible scale, partly because the world needs dollars and therefore has enormous demand for dollar assets. So, thinking about the long term question here, what happens if that demand ever starts weakening? America would have to offer investors higher interest rate to convince them to keep buying its debt. That's why we should pay close attention. America has built an extraordinary financial system that has allowed it to borrow more cheaply, spend more freely, and carry more debt than any other country on earth. That system remains incredibly powerful, but white privilege will not last forever. America has crossed 40 trillion in less than 5 months, and there currently no serious indication that the borrowing will stop there. So the question is, how high can this number go before something fundamental has to change? 50 trillion, 70 trillion, 100 trillion? And what happens to the rest of the world if confidence in the financial system that has supported all of this ever begins to change? This is why this story should matter to you and your loved ones. What are your thoughts about America's debt? Does the power of the dollar means that America can continue doing the same thing for the next decade? Let me know what you think in the comments section below this audio podcast, and make arrangements with me to come on this show and let's talk about it in real time on camera. Please leave a public comment about the topic in the comment section below this audio podcast and share with your friends on all social media sites you are on. This will help get the ball rolling. Our third topic: Judge denies Carmelo Anthony appeal for new trial. In this episode, we explain how Judge Michael Chitlit, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, Chitlit, denies Carmelo Anthony's motion for a new trial, but a potent, oh, procedural deny isn't the same as the truth being settled. We break down what the ruling actually means, what it does, and what the suppressed evidence uncovered still matters. We are not surprised about the Carmelo Anthony case. I covered this case extensively, and I was talking about all the backdoor deals that were going on. Now we have a radical right conservative. They're dismissing all the allegations against Austin Metcalf. They found text messages of Carmelo Anthony. He wrote to his ex girlfriend in 2021. They also discovered racist patterns from Austin Metcalf. I found a TikTok video entitled, quote, "We just got confirmation the Metcalf twins are violent racists," unquote. To watch the video clip, just go to my Medium transcript located in the comment section below this audio podcast. Click on the link, then scroll down to show and prove. What I learned from this video is that the Metcalf twins have a history of bullying black boys at school. Most black Americans thought that Carmelo Anthony would get a new trial or it was going to be a mistrial. The text messages that are saying that Carmelo sent to his ex-girlfriend was from a year before the incident took place. The media is trying to paint it as if those text messages were current, and it was also taken out of context where there were texts from Austin and Hunter. Defense attorney Michael Howard testified that the incident raises in motion were covered by the agreement between the defense and the prosecution, revealed that Austin Metcalf had multiple past school reports accusing him of bullying black students. This information emerged during a post conviction retrial hearing for Carmelo Anthony. During the post trial hearing, Carmelo, Carmelo Anthony new trial team presented the previous hidden character of Austin Metcalf and his twin brother. These records include 2023 bullying allegations. School records from 2023 indicate that Austin Metcalf had bullied a black student in class but faced no formal discipline. He was formally ordered to stay away from a different black student. He had a whole history of running up and bullying black students. So what was his intention when he ran up on Carmelo Anthony? Both the prosecutor and the defense presented their case using a motion for a new trial hearing to expose the violent backgrounds of both Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. The hypocrisy of these people in terms of when things are a self defense, just it's ridiculous. When you look at the backgrounds of Austin Metcalf, they're willing to overlook all of the racist violence he caused because he is a white male in a southern state of Texas. The history in this country speaks for itself. What we have on record and documented based on the facts that these twin boys developed a racist attitude towards black people. They have a history of bullying black boys. One of them kicked a girl in the stomach. All of this stuff is documented. The defense lawyers were able to get the judge removed. Austin Metcalf would still be here today if he never approached Carmelo Anthony, but his history explained why he walked up on Carmelo Anthony. He has a history of being a bully. That's one thing that these black conservatives and white Americans don't want to acknowledge. If black Americans would embrace my vision and plan, then we would have had an anti-black hate crime bill by now. For me, it's not about just running to Africa. It's about connecting with other like-minded black people and African people. It's about building our own institution and cleaning up our low-income community. It's about connecting with our black middle class community and building an alliance with the African immigrant community in Chicago and surrounding suburbs. It's about having standards and separating ourselves from the enemy within. That is con artists, black boule, degenerates, Democrat shields, hardened criminals, pedophiles, off code Negroes, and urban terrorists. I created this platform to come before Black America and Africa, not as a beggar, but as an authentic Black man with a vision and plan to solve our social issues here in America and also on the African continent. I lack two things: the capital and the manpower. This is why I wrote and published my revised book in order to generate capital, not for it to remain on Amazon. Also, to recruit brave and smart Black Americans beyond Chicago, brave and smart African immigrants across the United States. Please leave a public comment about the topic in the comment section below this audio podcast and share with your friends on all social media sites you are on. This will help get the ball rolling. I am a Black American, a descendant of American slaves slash freedmen. I am called to help improve the lives of Black Americans who become camp members and build a connection with African immigrants who want to be a part of us. CAM members will assist me in building and running this Christian business. Grekai of Chicago. Also, also that both groups, Black Americans and African immigrants, can build and heal from the scars of slavery and colonization. My people who have the moral capital, our fight for civil rights and human rights, this business is for you and your immediate family members. Thank you for listening to our audio podcast and for joining us on the screen. We greatly appreciate it. I need you all to support our film project so that we can move Cam to the next level, and that is the big screen, to let the Black world know who we are and what we're trying to do for DAS FM, descendants of American slaves slash freedmen. Quote, hood liberator, made in Chicago, the war against Willie Lynch begins, unquote. You can be a part of this historic docudrama by contributing to our crowdfunding pages, which are our GoFundMe page, our Buy Me a Coffee page, or our PayPal Giving Fund page, which will help fund marketing, promotion, clearance, legal, and general expenses. Thank you for listening to our YouTube Live or the replay. If you reside on the African continent, then I recommend that you follow me on my Podchaser because it won't eat away at your bundles. It's only audio. I provide the link in the comment section below this audio podcast. If you are new to Help Stop the Genocide in American Ghettos podcast, welcome to our safe space where we discuss Black issues and African issues. We do this every week. This will conclude our audio podcast for today. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. See you on the next episode. Before I go, I want to pull up the videos now so you can listen to those. That's kind of like my receipts. I also have articles. So, just You can read those articles. Do whatever you like. Bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. Um, see where we're gonna start. Okay, so see that right there? That's letting it says how much money the U.S. owes to other countries. So see these 10 countries. So you have Jamaica, Japan. That's 1.1 trillion. UK, 866 billion. China, 683 billion. Belgium, 477 billion. Canada, 468 billion. I don't even know how to pronounce that word, so it is what it is. Well, America owes 4,035 billion. Cayman Islands, 421 billion. France, 368 billion. Ireland, 34 or 340 billion. And Switzerland, 29 294 billion. Okay. All righty. And that this is the source here, so you can go there, look at the where I found it from. Okay. Um, let's see what else we got. Um, we have this right here. This is called investing.com. And so I recommend that you would read this article. I'm not going to read it because I went through enough already, but you can read it on your own time and stuff like that. But all I'm saying is this is the title: U.S. debt crosses 40 trillion thresholds after doubling under Trump and Biden. Okay. And so there's the article right there. So, you can just read all that. Okay. Um, all right, we're just gonna look at some of this stuff. And this is the article that's talking about 6 murdered Sunday as Chicago weekend shooting leaves 25 victims. So here it is. You can read all that. And then they tell you over here, the exact time and everything. This stuff is really sad. So, all right. Let's see what else we have here. Um, all right, this is about an urban terrorist, ladies and gentlemen. Just this is how they get down. It's horrible. But we could watch it in real time. Watch this.
of them remain under investigation with no reportable arrests as of yet. This as CPD's latest data continues to show an overall decline in both shootings and homicides. Surveillance video shows Ricardo Gomez as he slowly walks towards the sidewalk on Hamlin near 26th Street. It
Right
is
here.
just after 11 p.m. last night. A vehicle pulls up beside him. We have frozen the video right as someone inside opens fire, killing Gomez.
Special offenders were in a black SUV. It went eastbound on 27th Street, and they fired from the rear passenger side of the window.
His girlfriend telling us off camera today the Little Village teenager was on his way to see her. He needed the ID inside his wallet. Baltazar Enriquez with the Little Village Community Council this afternoon, speaking on behalf of those in the neighborhood too afraid to do so themselves.
This is a child. He had a future ahead of him. He was going to travel to Mexico. This is to see his mom. Now he's not.
The shooting is one of 5 separate incidents that took place on the city's south and west sides overnight. 7 teenagers between 16 and 18 years old were shot. In Austin, 3 were injured, 2 of them critically, near Central Avenue and Adams. Police saying they were also victims of a drive-by. The violent night comes on the heels of 4 people being murdered and 9 others injured last Sunday. This, even as recent CPD data shows Chicago recording the fewest number of homicides for any single July month in more than 50 years.
When politicians throw out numbers, to them it's numbers. To us as sons, brothers, sisters, mothers.
A vigil is being planned tonight in Little Village to honor Ricardo Gomez. Police saying at this point his murder is still under investigation.
Okay. Let's check this out.
A judge in Texas has now ruled that 19-year-old Carmelo Anthony will not get a new trial after he was convicted of stabbing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf to death back in June. Anthony was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Let's go now to Max Gordon for the latest developments. Max, this seems like big news. What do you have for us?
Hey there. Well, the new judge in this case, retired District Judge Michael Chitty, had until Monday to make a ruling, but it is now being reported that he has ruled before that deadline, denying a retrial in this case. Now, this comes after the original judge in Anthony's murder trial was removed from proceedings. That judge, Judge John Roach, said after the trial during a TV interview that the jury, quote, got it right when they delivered a guilty verdict, and there were questions about his impartiality. Anthony, now 19, was convicted in June of stabbing and killing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf during an altercation at a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas. A Collin County jury sentenced Anthony to 35 years in prison. At the center of this new trial hearing is a verbal agreement between Anthony's original defense team and prosecutors to keep certain character evidence about both sides from the jury. Now, at the time the agreement was made to keep from further inflaming the case, which was already boiling over with racial tensions and death threats. But during this retrial hearing, that evidence was being discussed, and that included allegations that Metcalf had used racial slurs in the past and bullied black classmates. And it also included violent texts from Anthony, including one which read, "When I stab SB, I'm going to lick their blood off the blade." So some disturbing stuff right now, right there. But again, Anthony's motion for a retrial also argued that Anthony's Sixth Amendment right to a public trial was violated because of courtroom restrictions. But again, the defense's arguments clearly not enough to sway the judge. The judge, it's being reported, is denying that retrial. Joey?
Max Gordon, thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Tommy, this is a new development. I guess all week this week we've heard that there may be a new trial. They may push for a new trial because the first judge accused himself for things he said after the trial. But then with that comes this new evidence, I guess. I don't know if it could be used in a new trial, but it seems like it really does hurt the character of Anthony, who was kind of painted to be, a good kid that snapped.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there were reasons in this arrangement, this agreement to keep this character evidence on both sides out of the original trial or out, not to the extent that we have now with some of these text messages. But just for me as a layman, when I look at this body of evidence here, of character evidence about Carmelo Anthony, and you see not only the messages that he sent to his girlfriend, but the death threats and other things of that nature, talking about licking the blade. Yeah. That gives a whole lot of context. And I understand not wanting to have this character evidence introduced for a young man and then, of course, a deceased young man, because, of course, you don't want to bring that into the public sphere, and that's understandable. But there was so much discussion about race in this trial and how Anthony was backed into a corner and he acted in self-defense, and there were so many prominent people, including elected officials, who made that claim. This gives a lot more backstory, and I understand not wanting to bring it in, but it sheds a lot more light on exactly who he is and how this all went down, in my opinion.
David, welcome to the Big Weekend Show.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Glad to be here.
So I guess that is the question is, all these people that have done so much to support him, they've protested for him, they've said that it was only because he was black that he was arrested, much less convicted. Do you think this would deter them at all, some of this evidence that they're talking about?
No, because they have the script already prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, they know where they're going. Evidence doesn't mean much to a political agenda like the ones that they have. They talk about how he is a young man. 19 is very young, but guess what? He's got 2 years on Austin Metcalf. Metcalf was 17 when he was stabbed to death. I mean, he's got years now. 35 years. He'll probably get time off from that full sentence, but there's plenty of time for him to think more clearly about what he has done, more clearly about what he could do once he's let out, and perhaps there's some chance for retribution, from the family, at least in terms of getting a little justice for what happened to their son. But at the very least, this guy's going to stay in prison for a while. He's going to be off the streets. Clearly, his mind was just consumed by the evil thoughts of killing somebody in the worst possible ways. He's a sick person who needs time to think about what he's done. He's now got the time to do that.
Alicia, that's a good point that David makes. He didn't get life in prison. Right. He didn't get the death penalty. He will get out. In his somewhere between his late 40s and 60s. So it's not like his entire life is going to be in prison. He's going to spend time in prison and then have a life after that, whereas Austin Metcalf is no longer with us.
Yeah, exactly. And David, when you said this gives him time to think about what he did, I would hope that as a member of society, that someone who did this would do that. But you have to also remember, he's been treated in large part by a big part of the community there as the victim. He was the one who stabbed this young man who had his whole life ahead of him. Right. And yet protesters show up and they treat him like he was the one who was wrong. Despite all of the evidence, despite the people who came and took the stand and said, other teammates who said, he stabbed him. He wasn't defending himself, But I mean, yeah, I hope that he does learn something from this, at least.
And perhaps also some of the politicians who are so quick to call this racism, perhaps they could learn a little something as well. I think James Tallarico recently.
They're not going to.
I'm sorry. But I just don't think I don't think they're going to get it. I mean, you really don't either.
No.
I mean, I think revelation from that quarter is unlikely. However, there is a possibility that Carmelo Anthony will have time to think about it. I mean, there are these extraordinary cases where people do turn their lives around from within the prison cell because there's something about that environment that really gets you thinking deep.
And we're hopeful for
out that the Metcalf twins are exactly who the fuck we all knew they were. They're spawns of their racist ass shit ass daddy. They're racist ass pieces of shit. And I'm about to show you all the fucked up shit they've done in their lives starting at the age of 10. Let's get into it. Cut it off. But they were 10 years old in elementary school when they were arrested for assault charges for bullying a female classmate. 10 years fucking old. The victim accidentally touched Metcalf in the face, angering him, and he proceeded to forcefully shove the girl to the ground using both hands. Does that sound familiar? When you get done watching this video, you can go to my page, just go find the Jeff Metcalf interview and watch it, and you will see that it raised these boys to be just like him. Look what they got 12 months of probation for. Look at this. They were little racist fucking assholes. They have records from 2023 showing Metcalf bullied a black student and was not disciplined. A month before he was killed, Metcalf was ordered to stay away from a different black student he was accused of bullying. Several parents of cheerleaders at his high school said the children were afraid of both Hunter and Austin, which we heard that rumor during the trial. Austin was so fucked up that he was forced to go to a church group for those consumed by anger, lust, and addiction. Text messages from Hunter, Austin's brother, talking about wanting to jump kids from the Independence High School track team. These shitty indie kids talking, let's jump them. You're talking about two big fucking 18-year-olds who played football, who were strong as fuck, and who were violent as fuck. The girl that was shoved I told you about earlier, she had to go to the fucking hospital. She was hurt so bad. There was a 2023 incident involving Hunter where he was suspended in an undated incident after he and another student argued and allegedly threatened to bring guns to school. We have another incident in which Austin allegedly mocked a black student in 2022 for eating a banana. He filmed another student as he appeared to shove the boy's head into his crotch. Another 2023 incident. Austin cheering as a friend chased and tackled a black student, and Austin is heard saying, "Get over here, you black Jew." Mike Howard told the court that either Austin or Hunter had once grabbed their mother by the throat. At one point, Howard said Anthony witnessed one of the twins getting into a fight with other kids at a basketball game, leading the teen to believe the Metcalf brothers were prone to fighting. It's clear as day the Metcalf boys are large, violent, racist pieces of shit who learned everything from their racist piece of shit daddy, Jeff Metcalf. They were violent from the time they were 10 years old, pushing girls down to the point they went to the hospital, racist graffiti, harassing black boys the whole time they were in high school. This trial was a joke from start to finish. They didn't go under that tent and say, "Oh, will you please get out, Carmelo?" No, they saw a black boy, they wanted him out, and Carmelo had a reason to fear for his life. At the motion for a new trial today, it came out that the Metcalf twins are
I need to say, got to say this, fair use on all these videos that I'm showing. Everything, okay? Fair use. I forgot to mention that. Okay, I'm almost done. Okay, we're going to check her out, what she has to say. She's a black Republican. Like I say, we independent over here. We're not Democrats. We're not Republican. Independent.
Divide happening in our country right now. We have the ghetto, ratchet, Black Americans. You can't tell them anything. They know it all. Lack law and order. Those Black Americans. Then you have Black Americans that are just decent people trying to live and want to see a prosperous country and want to build families. And what is happening? We all get lumped into one. And why you say that? Well, because of this side, you guys make it harder for this side. And we're tired of it. We are. Yes, I'm a conservative Black woman, and I don't want to associate with this side. you glorify violence. You glorify sexual promiscuity. You glorify robbing, stealing, scamming. And when we on this side say, wait, no, absolutely not. We're not down with that. We don't want anything to do with it. You come after our Blackness and say that we are less than. But now when we call out your deplorable behavior, now we're trying to have proximity to whiteness. Make it make sense. Guess what? It doesn't. And, as a conservative, I see all the comments. I see, oh, you're a coon. You're an Uncle Tom. You're all that. I don't know what type of response you want out of me with that. I'm just letting you know when I see the comment, I automatically say, man, the lack of intellect is astounding. And I'm praying for you. I am. I'm praying for you. With that being said, I just want to let you know that our voices are getting louder. There is an uprising of more Black people that is tired of the toxic culture in community, and we're separating ourselves, but also we're raising generations that want nothing to do with that absolutely toxic behavior. And there's nothing you can do about it. So call us what you want, but baby, we're not going anywhere. And hey, I challenge you. Choose a side. Choose carefully, or get left behind. What a concept. Folks, there is a
Diaspora News Channel. Thank you for tuning in. It's good to be with you, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I want to touch very briefly today on the situation in Mississippi, specifically Tasia Fortune and Nolan Wells. Now, just hear me out. I'm not going to take up too much of your time, and I don't really particularly want to repeat things that have already been said, but I do think it's hugely important that we talk about the role of the grassroots and, the diaspora. This is the African Diaspora News Channel. Now, I'm not going to repeat the obvious things that you've already heard regarding these cases. There's a lot of talk online about the situation in Mississippi. Actually, I want to start first of all by just expressing my condolences sincerely. There are millions of us in the UK and in Europe, around the world, and we are as traumatized as you all are when we see these egregious examples of unaliving in Mississippi. And let's be clear, that's exactly what I believe the case to be in Mississippi. And we don't need a deep dive into the history of Mississippi right now. You already know what it is. Now, the one thing I do know is that when we see these quite obvious examples of what I would say, in my opinion, of unalivings in Mississippi, we're talking about collusion, really, very likely collusion with the local authorities. And again, I've got to choose my words carefully, right? But I suppose you could say the alleged collusion from everywhere from, the DA's office, the medical examiners, I believe oftentimes the local police forces. We know the deep history of how these forces were grounded and founded, have their roots in, certain, slave catching patrols. All these kinds of things. Now, that makes for a very difficult terrain to navigate when it comes to justice. And I think oftentimes the effects of these unalivings is it puts us in a state of shock paralysis. But I think we have something on our side that we have and must utilize when it comes to giving the best chance of justice, to our family over there, Now, what I want to talk about is the role really of you could say the new black media, the grassroots, however you might characterize our role. Now, I saw in London and actually other cities and towns across the UK and Europe, the rallying and the outcry when it came to two specific examples of unalivings of black men. In this instance, I'm talking about George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, both in 2020. Now, I want to deal first with the case of George Floyd. Now, the entire unaliving of Floyd was caught on camera. And even then, there was some ambiguity and questions about whether justice was going to be done. And in the end, Derek Chauvin was prisoned quite rightly, for life, I believe, or certainly a long period of his life. But even with the public pressure and, the protests that erupted, not just in the US, but around the world, we only saw one of the officers really face justice, Derek Chauvin. There were other officers that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, have not really received justice or faced accountability for their role in the unaliving of George Floyd in Minneapolis. And I want to touch on the case of Ahmaud Arbery. I remember that case very, very clearly because, of course, it happened in Georgia, right? And what we saw really was not just the usual, violence of the characters of Gregory and Travis McMichael, the filming of the unaliving by Roddy Bryan. We also saw alleged collusion with the local state authorities. I believe the DA, her name was Jackie Johnson. There were serious questions about her. And despite the mountain of evidence, pointing in a direction of guilt, they very nearly got away with it. I remember, if you cast your minds back, there's this really very upsetting video of the moments after Ahmaud Arbery was shot. And he's literally laying on the floor in his final moments. Excuse me. He's still breathing, and you hear the initial sympathy from the police officer towards the father and son. I think the officer, excuse me, that arrives at the scene, the officer, she says, I can't imagine what you're going through. Imagine that, she said to the perpetrators who were later found guilty and given life, I can't imagine what you're going through. So it's not just a case of, these people that go around committing these heinous acts. We're talking about an entire system of collusion, really, a national system of collusion. But I would move the ball forward a bit as well. We're talking about really an international system of collusion. Now, what do I mean by that? The late, great Malcolm X, he understood in the final years of his life that to really bring about justice for Black people in America and around the world, the framing of these unalivings needed to have an international framing with international implications. He wanted to charge the US government, for crimes against Black people. And I feel, and this is back to what I feel should be the central role of, not just the grassroots in the US, that much is obvious, but the grassroots around the world need to rally behind the community in America. And we've seen the power of when that happened before. We can actually get things done. Now, the only way justice is going to be done, believe me, in the case of Nolan Wells and Tasia Fortune, is if the entire grassroots in the United States and also around the world rally behind the cry for these cases to see justice. Now, I don't know if you know this, but so powerful were the Black Lives Matter protests in support of our family in the US. Quite literally, some of us have family there. So powerful were the protests that the UK government had to bring about legislation to control future protests. there was a piece of legislation that got passed in the UK Parliament called the Police Crime Courts and Sentencing Bill. Now, the summary of this piece of legislation was that it gave the government and the police extra powers to clamp down on legal, legitimate, democratic protests, because they saw millions of people across the country rallying. And I'm talking, there was fury when people saw George Floyd unalived, and Ahmaud Arbery, and all the other cases, Breonna Taylor, the list goes on. And I really believe not only did that create a mass movement sort of globally in support, I kind of believe, you might disagree, the only way the federal government in the US, or the ones with real power, the federal government, the White House, the only time they're really shaken into action is when they are really getting held to account globally. I'll give you another example, and I'm going to put this document up on screen. Following the unaliving of George Floyd, there was a commission. Now this story was a big story for me. It was a big story for me, but it really kind of got buried. And there was a commission that was formed, and the commission was made up. Listen to this. The commission was made up of a number of judges, lawyers, legal experts, really serious people from around the world. I know one or two of them from the UK. And what they did was they examined, a large number of unalivings of black people in the US, and these judges, legal experts, and lawyers, they found that these unalivings met the legal criteria for crimes against humanity. The continuous unaliving of black people in America, oftentimes, by the police and others, met the legal criteria for crimes against humanity. And this is exactly what Malcolm X was talking about. And in my humble opinion, this is what we are talking about in the state of Mississippi. Now, there's another aspect to this that we need to be thoroughly aware of. Now, I'm not going to talk for too long on this, but just walk with me for a minute. Not only is the grassroots nationally in America and internationally key in bringing about a semblance of justice, as we saw with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, if these unalivings were happening to any other community, I promise you this, if any other community or religion really, and one religion in particular, was facing these unalivings regularly, there would be outcry from the UN Secretary General, the Deputy Secretary General. There would be the European Union speaking about this. You would have global human rights bodies speaking about this. You would have heads of state speaking about this. You would have prime ministers talking about this. But of course, anti-black racism is not only the foundation of the so-called West. I believe it's the literal currency that keeps the world moving. The exploitation of black people in all the forms globally that we're talking about is the currency that keeps the world moving. It's the way that the system is upheld. It stops real accountability from people that what was the saying? If you can convince the poorest white man that he's better off than a rich black man, you can keep the system in place. Anti-black racism is global currency. It is practiced, unfortunately, by every single community. Such is the power of what colonialism has done. It's brainwashed people, even people from our communities, as we know, that look like us, into speaking out against us. I'm going to do a whole nother video about that. But I want to wheel it back to my central point, really, and that is this. The only way we're going to see justice for Tasia Fortune, Trey Reed, Nolan Wells, the only way we're going to see justice is if we utilize our power in the grassroots, and that is speaking about it on our platforms, podcasts, social media, the articles, the videos, the reactions, utilizing all the different platforms, and to keep their names in the public realm. Because I promise you this, and I promise you I'm going to land my plane on this. I know I've been going on for a minute now.
So you want to start a podcast, but you're not sure how. Riverside's got you covered. First, go to riverside.com and open an account. And when you're ready to record, just hit the record button to capture high quality video.
The individuals, the gutless cowards that unalived Nolan Wells. I believe, in my opinion, right? Got to be careful with my words, but I believe, in my opinion, the gutless cowards that unalived Nolan Wells and Tasia Fortune, they were really counting on the fact that they would get away with this. What they really thought was going to happen was that, you know, the local authorities would say there's nothing suspicious, there's no investigation into anything nefarious, carry on and keep walking. Well, guess what? That hasn't happened. That hasn't happened. Millions of us around the world, we love and care deeply about all Black people in the diaspora, and that includes the United States of America. And we know too that there's a very special energy, you know, from the community in the US. You guys that have a long history in the US and you descend from enslaved communities, you've not only survived, you know, the heinous crime of the transatlantic slave trade, the most, you know, the most terrible crime in human history. You've come through that. You've survived. You've thrived. You've gifted many wonderful things to the world. But there's a special energy that no one can really deny. In fact, we should actually acknowledge and celebrate this, like we should celebrate each other. You know, there's a special energy of activism, of getting things done. You know, the leaders that you've had from your community to the world have gone on to become global icons. So what I'm really saying is this: please keep up the momentum in the United States. The you know, the foundational grassroots media and community in the US keep saying the names of Tasia Fortune, Nolan Wells, all the others. You have our committed solidarity from around the world. We stand with you. Keep up the pressure, because it can be the difference between justice, or a semblance of it. It can be the difference between justice and zero accountability. And this evil has to be held to account. It must be held to account. You know, it may well be that with the changing dynamic of global populations, white supremacy as an ideology and a system, it may well be in its sort of final stages. But to use the metaphor of a wounded animal, sometimes a wounded animal can be at its most dangerous when it's backed into a corner. When it's backed into a corner, despite a mortal or fatal wound, it can be its most vicious. So keep up the pressure on social media. Keep up the pressure in the new Black media. Keep up the pressure anywhere you can. Demand justice. Keep circulating their names. And, you know, please be careful in the US. I mean, this probably sounds a little bit too obvious. But if you're in these states where you know that the police and authorities are utterly corrupted, I say utterly corrupted with white supremacist individuals and leanings, be on your A game when it comes to safety. Don't mess around, because again, I'm sorry to repeat myself. We know these people only pick vulnerable targets, right? They only go for vulnerable targets. And that goes not just for the individuals who might not necessarily be part of the authorities. It goes for the individuals who have a badge, somehow have a badge. You know, I think to the case of Sonia Massey, rest in peace to her. She was a soft target. It wasn't that she was unalived by the police officer that did it. They actually visited her home, according to her son. If you remember that case, they visited her home in the hours before, and they realized she was vulnerable, and that's why they targeted her. But anyway, I've said enough on this topic. I didn't really want to weigh in unless I had something different to bring to the table. Yeah, alternate media, new Black media, keep up the pressure in the US. You have our support around the diaspora. That's what this channel's about. Thank you very much for tuning in. Remember to support the platform. Go download the app, like and share the video. Check out the other amazing reporters on this channel. Peace and love. See you next time.
I'm gonna say it again. If it's been said once, I'ma say it again. Black folks would show up to vote more so than we already do if we knew we were showing up to protect or to keep something that was beneficial to us. Yes, I'm going to keep saying it because I keep hearing these conversations. Oh, black people, they're not showing up. And well, if more black people would have showed up, then such and such would have been in the office or this and that. Now, I was listening to Al Sharpton the other day, and that was kind of the conversation they were having. And I'm like, man, when are they really going to have the conversation? They're starting to a little bit, but when are they really going to have the conversation? It's like, yeah, black folks really don't show up because they don't have anything to lose. They, meaning us, we don't have anything to lose, okay? They told us that our voting rights was in danger, and we was like, oh, okay, what's new, okay? Oh, well, you got to protect this person. Oh, they trying to vote them out. Okay, what's new? But they're not saying stuff like, if you don't vote for this person or that, they're going to take your reparations. You know why they're not saying that? Because for one, we've never gotten reparations. It's due to us. We've never gotten it. They'll talk about it here and there, right? To, to get our attention, but they're not really serious about it. See, but if we had it or we had something that was tangible, that was meaningful to us, and they said, hey, if you don't, make sure that person is in office or whatever it is, yeah, we show up to vote for that. Yeah, we got to make sure because they making sure we getting ours, right? Our neighborhood is taken care of. The crime is down, right? We got resources coming in. Yeah, we want to protect that person, okay? But what they're really saying at this point is, you got to vote for the Democrat, okay? And I'm not saying vote for the Republican, okay? But you got to vote for the Democrat because black people and Democrats and black people, you got to vote for them. Why? What? So we can watch them run around the country champion for illegal immigration? That's what the black vote is doing. The Democrats can't get into office without the black vote. So what we're doing is helping everybody else get something. Again, wherever you go in the United States, especially in California, it's all about illegal immigrants, and a little bitty amount of black folks that are still left in California show up to vote for the Democrats. And then you cry on the other hand about, I can't get a job because the Latinos are gatekeeping. They setting up shop, the vendors in front of people's businesses. They talking about they want illegal immigrants to have the right to vote because they should have a say so. They want to take, taxpayers' dollars and get legal help for illegal immigrants. Y'all cry about that stuff, but then you show up and vote for nothing. Or you just stop showing up because, like I said, what are you showing up for? Ain't nothing benefiting you. Okay, now they'll say, the Republicans this, the Republicans that. Okay. But what are you doing, Democrats, for me to show up? I'm not losing anything. I promise you. In every neighborhood, black neighborhood in America, if black folks knew they were going to lose something, I'm not talking about redistricting because you can still vote. Because as I always say, and it's been said, what has that particular black representative or misrepresentative been doing for black folks? It doesn't matter if Kermit the Frog got the position, okay, opposed to a black representative. It'll probably be the same. Hell, maybe Kermit the Frog will do something, right? He'll get rid of all the flies because frogs like flies, all right? We can do with less flies. But what difference does it make that you're black and, the Republicans are trying to take your job? You ain't using it to help the people that you say you represent anyway. So that's why black folks are just kind of shoulder shrugging that kind of stuff. But again, they said, this black representative job is in danger. The one that's making sure that you got clean water, that crime is down, that there are jobs, viable jobs coming into the community, and that they're making sure that y'all actually seeing some money, that your kids' schools are, just as good as the white schools and all these other things. Yes, there's jobs for the children. There ain't no potholes in your lawn. Black folks say, wait a minute now. When we voting? Because I want to make sure I get there early because I want to make sure that particular person is going to keep their job. I promise you, we would be on that type of time. But as it stands now, we see what the Democrats are doing again. And I ain't talking about the Republicans, okay? But the Democrats are what they're doing and not doing for black folks. See, the day and age of guilting black people. Oh, you got to show up because the boogeyman, Trump, the Republicans, we're like, we've been through worse. We've survived worse. Okay? You know, oh, you're next. We're always next. We've never not been next. It's always been us. See, it doesn't get a lot of attention right now because you all, the Democrats, you're running around talking about illegal immigration this, illegal immigration that, right? Everybody else's community, but, you know, black folks, y'all want to freak us out. You know, you going back on the plantation. That's next. They going to bring back slavery. You mean the mass incarceration of black Americans is not slavery to a degree? What do you mean they're going to bring it back? Oh, you mean that we're actually going to be on the plantation? All right. Well, when and if that happens, I guess we'll deal with it then. But right now, I'm not on no plantation. You mean that if I don't show up, put feet in the streets for, you know, other communities and, you know, this little black and brown unity y'all keep trying to sell us, and, you know, they're going to do it to us too? Well, most black folks with some common sense will say they've been doing it to us. Where has the other communities been when they've been doing it to us? We know, especially in somewhere like California, where reparations was almost, I guess, maybe a thing. It was maybe smoke and mirrors. I don't know. When that conversation for reparations for black California descendants of slavery was going on, the Asians and the Latinos, they got together. They formed a brown and yellow unity against black folks, saying we don't want them to have it. Mind you, they didn't have the issues our ancestors had, but they got together and said we don't want them to have it. We don't think they deserve reparations, but that yet we're told, you know, from some of this misleadership in the Democratic Party, oh, you know, black people is the black and the brown, the black and the brown, the black and the brown. We got to we all together. You know, Maxine Waters talking about this is the biggest coalition of black and brown unity. No, it's not, ma'am. It's not. What you're saying, it should be. Okay, let's keep it about. It should be. It's just not that. But when we talk about black and brown unity, it's always when they want the black to get together with the brown, but never the brown to get together with the black. That's the way it is. You don't hear black misleadership crashing out when things are going on with black folks in America, which is always, you don't hear them say, hey, brown people, we need the brown and black unity. We need y'all to get together. You never hear it. You won't ever hear it. But again, if that was the case, where the brown was helping the black and we was like, oh man, yeah, we got to get out there and protest and march with them because they are very beneficial to our community as well, we would do it. We would. Okay, if there was really this unity that it should be, but it's not, we would do it in a heartbeat. But again, I'm saying this to the Democrats. If you really want black Americans to care about things, and we should care. I'm not saying we shouldn't care. There's certain things we should care about. But if you want us to show up for you, you got to show up for us. You got to give us something to fear that we'll actually miss if, you know, if we don't keep you in office. But you're ineffective for black folks. You don't deliver any goods to black Americans. You don't. You may say you do. The things that you do is an everybody thing. Because you'll stand 10 toes down on that. Oh, I can't just do something just for black people. No. Kamala, right? But then you'll tout about, we're making sure that ISIS can't do this and we want to abolish ICE. Oh, the illegal immigrants. Oh, they're our family. They're undocumented. Oh, gosh, they're a part of our community. And we want to make sure they get this funding and this, that, and the other. The trans this and the LGBTQ this, that, and the other. But all right. What about something for black Americans? Oh, I just can't. I'm the councilman of everybody. I'm the president of everybody. So, all right. Well, then get everybody else to do it. Because, see, they'll miss something if you're not there. Us, it's just, okay.
breath and look at the world for exactly what it is today. My people, I want you to take a deep breath and look at the world for exactly what it is today. We are living in an era where the masks aren't just sleeping. They are being ripped off in broad daylight. Yesterday, something happened in Brussels that should make every single African, every member of the diaspora, and every lover of true autonomy feel a fire in their bones. Welcome back to Power and Pulse. To our subscribers, thank you for standing with us. You are the heartbeat of this movement. And if you're new, you've arrived at the exact moment the tide is turning. Yesterday, the European Union Parliament held a session. They sat in their air-conditioned halls in Europe to discuss Niger, not their own failing economies, not the energy crisis freezing their citizens, but a sovereign African nation thousands of miles away. They passed a resolution. They sat in Brussels to craft a decree about how Niger should run its own house. Their topic, the fate of Mohamed Bazoum, the man they call a former president, but who the people of Niger remember as something far more sinister. They are demanding his liberation. They are demanding that Niger bends the knee to a European mandate. But tonight, we aren't just reporting the news. We are exposing the audacity. We are asking the question the EU is too afraid to answer. Who gave you the guts to intervene in the affairs of a nation that has finally decided to breathe for itself? Stay with me, because what happened after that resolution, the response from Niamey, and the reality of the uranium trap is a masterclass in how an empire crumbles when the puppets finally cut their own.
I run 17 companies inside a $200 million portfolio, and I see $2 to $5 million companies become $10 to $20 million companies after implementing just one thing they can build in half a day. This is part one of how to...
Let's get into the why. Why is the EU so obsessed with Mohamed Bazoum? Why are they losing sleep in Brussels over a man who has been under house arrest for over 2 years pending trial? To understand the EU's panic, you have to understand what Niger looked like under Bazoum. The Western media love to paint him as a democratically elected martyr. But if you ask the youth in the streets of Niamey, they will give you a different title: the chief extractor under the previous administration. Niger wasn't a country, it was a warehouse where the keys were kept in Paris, while Bazoum was being paraded as international summit as the poster boy for West African stability. His people were living in darkness. Niger has some of the highest quality uranium on the planet. It has gold, it has oil, it has cobalt. Yet, under the Bazoum regime, Niger consistently ranked at the very bottom of the Human Development Index. How does that happen? How do you sit on a mountain of gold and end up with a starving population? It happens through administrative treason. Bazoum's government allowed French companies like Orano, formerly Areva, to extract uranium for decades at prices that were essentially a gift. While 1 out of every 3 light bulbs in France was powered by Nigerian uranium, 80% of Nigerians didn't even have access to a reliable power grid. That is a democracy the EU is mourning. They aren't mourning a man, they are mourning their access. Now, let's look at the numbers from yesterday's session in Brussels. 529 members of the EU Parliament voted in favor of this resolution. Only 2 had the courage to vote against it. 29 decided to hide in the cowardly shadows of neutrality. Think about that ratio. Nearly the entire European political establishment decided they have the legal and moral authority to tell a sovereign African state to handle its judicial process. I have a question for the EU. Which African country has ever held a parliamentary session to pass a resolution about your internal affairs? When the Yellow Vest protesters were being suppressed in France, did the African Union pass a resolution demanding the liberation of protesters? When the UK had 3 prime ministers in 1 year, did Niger send a charge d'affaires to London to demand a return to constitutional order? Of course not. Because African nations respect the basic principles of non-interference. But for the EU, supremacy is just a word they use when they want to protect their own borders. When it comes to Africa, they still think it's 1884. They still think they can sit around a table in Berlin or Brussels and carve out our destiny with a pen. If the EU thought Niger would just sit back and take this insult, they clearly haven't been paying attention to the new Africa. General Abdurrahman Chiani and the CNSP didn't wait for the ink to dry on that resolution. The Nigerian government immediately summoned the EU, charged their affairs in Niamey. They didn't offer tea and biscuits. They handed over a letter of protest that was a diplomatic slap in the face. They made it clear, Niger is no longer your playground. This letter didn't just reject the resolution, it exposed it as a sinister decision. The atmosphere in Niamey is electric. The people are tired of friendly relationships that involve them being robbed at gunpoint. The diplomatic friendliness that the West tried to restore after the initial sanctions failed, that's gone. It's tense again, and it should be, because you cannot have a friendship with someone who refuses to acknowledge you are an adult in your own home. Let's talk about the real pause of the story. Why is France fuming? Why is the EU so desperate? It's the uranium, my people. It's always been the uranium. For 50 years, France has paraded around Europe as the king of nuclear energy. They export power to Germany, to Italy, and to Spain. They bragged about strategic autonomy. But here is a secret they never wanted you to know. France's strategic autonomy was built on Niger's back. France has over 50 nuclear reactors. Do you know how many uranium mines they have in France? 0. They were getting it from Niger at a fraction of the market price. When the CNSP took over and the pipelines of extraction started to rattle, the light in Paris started to flicker. They are having massive challenges supplying electricity. Their top-tier status is collapsing because the host has finally realized the parasite is hungry. This isn't just about Niger anymore. This is about the AES. The Alliance of Sahel States, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso have formed a wall of dignity that Brussels can't climb over. When the EU passes a resolution against Niger, they are passing it against the entire Sahel. They are dealing with a new generation of African leaders who aren't looking for pats on the back from the West. They are looking for results for their people. Europe is acting like a toxic ex-boyfriend. Like my toxic ex. They see Niger moving on, getting healthy, hanging out with new friends like Russia and China, and they can't stand it. So they sit in their room in Brussels and write resolutions about how Niger should come back to them. Please liberate Bazoum, come back to the old ways. Niger isn't coming back. The locks have been changed. The puppets have retired, and the house is under new management. Let's address.
You travel a lot for work, but that doesn't mean you should be a part-time travel agent. There must be a better... No, I'm not going to say it. Let me just show you.
There's the elephant in the room. The EU says Bazoum is being held illegally. Let's look at the charges. Mohamed Bazoum is facing trial for high treason. He is being investigated for his role in undermining the national security of Niger and for his deep, dark financial ties to foreign powers that saw billions of francs disappear from national treasury. In any Western democracy, if a leader was found to be working for a foreign intelligence agency to extract the country's minerals, they would be in a cell for the rest of their lives. But when it happens in Africa and the leader is a friend of the West, suddenly it's a human rights violation. We see the hypocrisy. We see the double standards. Niger is following its own legal process. And the last time I checked, the EU is on the Supreme Court of Africa. To the youth watching this, for the first time in our lifetimes, we are seeing African leaders who aren't afraid of a letter of protest from Europe. We are seeing a generation that understands the sovereignty isn't given, it's taken. The EU thinks they are obliged Niger to act. The only thing Niger is obliged to do is serve the Nigerian people, the good people of Africa, the youth who are tired of being treated like second-class citizens on their own continent are right there with the leadership in Niamey. We see the sinister plans. We know the history of the CFA franc. We know how they use our central banks to fund their own lifestyle. And we are saying never again. So let the EU sit in their halls. Let them pass 1,000 more resolutions. Let them vote until their fingers are tired. It won't change the fact that the uranium is staying in the ground until the price is right. It won't change the fact that the puppets have been replaced by patriots. It won't change the fact that Africa is no longer asking for a seat at your table. We are building our own house. If you stand with Niger, if you believe that no European Parliament has the right to dictate terms to a sovereign African state, then I need you to make your voices heard right now. Smash that like button to show the algorithm that we support African supremacy. Share this video. Send it to every group, every friend, every person who needs to know that the hunt for our resources is over. Comment autonomy below. Let's flood the comments and show the world that Africa is awake. Subscribe to Power and Pulse. The Brussels bluff has been called. The game is up. I'm your host, Marie. This is Power and Pulse. Until next time, stay blessed.
That a lot of people will see as the usual story about the financial markets and investing, because you will see what's like something happened this week that a lot of people will see as the usual story about the financial markets and investing, because you will see what's like ETF and government bond being thrown around. And when it is reported that way, many people will not look underneath what exactly is going on. But on this channel, we try our best to make sense of everything that concerns Africa, especially when it is originating from Europe, because we have reported it before on this channel, and it is not even a secret, because a few months ago, European and American leaders gathered in Germany, and they made their intentions very, very clear once again. They were talking about reviving the old agenda, aggressively securing resources, markets, and influence, with Africa at the center of it all. When Marco Rubio said it at the time, the Europeans and the Americans in that hall, they received it with excitement. Many people called it mere talks that a multipolar world will never allow such aggressive extraction to happen. So what happened this week? Europe launched a new fund in London, the first of its kind in Europe. And inside that fund is the debt of African governments. In the simplest terms, this fund is a kind of basket. Instead of buying one thing, you buy the basket, and it trades on stock exchange like a single share. And what did they put inside this single basket? They put the borrowing of African countries, the signed promises of African government gathered into one product as an ETF, listed in London, so an investor in Europe can trade a slice of Africa's debt as easily as buying shares in an app. And this is the part that we must not miss, ladies and gentlemen. No version of this product is currently listed on any stock exchange in Africa. It was built over there in Europe for Europeans. A powerful new marketplace for Africa's debt has opened, and Africa is not even trading inside it. And when I saw this news, another story that has been troubling me, it made complete sense. The ECO currency, the single currency that ECOWAS says they will be launching next year after decades of failures. This same ECO currency project that Guinea said they are no longer going to be part of it. Now you need to place these two stories side by side, and you will see the handwriting clearly written on the wall. They want to shape Africa's money. And now our debt has been turned into their product that they can trade in their stock market. They want to control Africa's money and Africa's debt. And when they control Africa's market and our money, they can control our future. That is what I want to talk about in this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you once again to Frontline Africa. Here we talk geopolitics from Africa's point of view. We try our best to do it with analysis on this channel, not emotion or fake news. We show up every single day, whether it is weekend, Christmas, New Year, it doesn't matter. We work each and every single day. So subscribe and don't forget to ring that bell because we are very close to 100,000 subscribers. And with your support, we can get there even faster. I want you to be part of this journey, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let me tell you the story of this ETF launch, because you know how I operate on this channel. I begin with verified facts first, and then my opinions can come later, and I will clearly tell you that these are my opinions. Now, earlier this week, a company called Lega and General, one of the biggest money managers in Britain, they opened a new fund on the London Stock Exchange. Their own announcement confirmed it as the first of its kind available anywhere in Europe. A basket that is now holding the bonds of African governments, and every single bond in it is in the United States dollars. It is not in Naira or any of our local African currencies or even cedi or shilling. It is in dollars, ladies and gentlemen. But the detail that made me to even pay closer attention was the seed money. Every new fund needs first capital to give it life. It is standard investing and economics. And here, it came from the British government. Yes, the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, an arm of the same British state that once ruled much of this continent of Africa. They put in their money. And according to the announcement itself, this is the first ever ETF the British Foreign Office has ever put in their money into. Yes, people put their money where their mouth belongs. So how do they even say, put your mouth where your money belongs? Whatever. Now, out of every fund on earth, the first one they chose to put their money and trade is African government debt in London. You can decide whether that is charity. This basket that they just created did not fall from the sky. It was built from an existing project. It was announced back in 2021 through the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. It is chaired by Vera Songwe, the Cameroonian economist who once led that commission. Its mission, their mission is to solve a problem African finance ministers have been shouting about for years. The problem I will explain much later, ladies and gentlemen. So when the government needs money for roads or salaries, refinancing old loans, they have to sell a bond. And a bond is nothing mysterious. I think it is a basic thing that we can understand. It is a signed promise. Give me your money today, and I will pay you back with interest tomorrow. The buyers do not have to keep that promise. They can resell it the way you can resell a car, a second-hand market for promises. It is basic financial market instrument. Now, this is the problem Africa has faced for decades. If a buyer believes he cannot easily resell that promise, that bond, when he needs his money back, he charges you extra before he buys it at all. The harder the exit, the higher the entry charge. Africa pays that extra toll on almost everything that Africa borrows, simply because the second-hand market for African promise is very, very thin. The liquidity is very low.
Do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? You may qualify for the IRS Fresh Start program.
African finance ministers call the result the African premium. Africa pays more to borrow than countries with similar or weaker numbers. And every extra percentage point on a $1 billion loan is $10 million a year that does not build a clinic or pay a teacher or fix anything in Africa. So the people behind this fund will tell you their logic, and I will give it a full strength. I will try to understand it. The basket will bring thousands of new buyers into that low liquidity market. It means more buyers, more trading, a busier second-hand market. And that extra toll, that extra interest, it will shrink. So the next time Kenya or Ghana or Zambia goes to borrow, they will pay a lower rate. If it works, that is if it works as designed, this form puts real money back into African treasuries. That is what is on paper, the argument. And it is not a stupid argument, ladies and gentlemen, because the idea was born from an African institution that is supposed to solve an African problem. But now we need to keep our eyes very open because nothing is as it seems. Because here comes the question the financial press will not like to ask. It stands on 3 facts that nobody can dispute. The debt in this basket is in dollars. It already lives in a foreign currency. The basket lives in London, built under European rules, sold over there in Europe with no version of any African exchange selling this bond. Now, let me be very clear here because I will not exaggerate it for you. The truth is heavy enough. Africa's dollar debt has already been traded by foreign investors before this new ETF was launched. That part is not new. What is new is that for the first time, that debt has been gathered into one ETF basket. A European investor can now buy or sell it in one click. And when fear enters, a European rate decision or a panic that has nothing to do with Africa, money rushes out of that ETF. And that selling pressure can flow down into the actual African bonds inside it, pushing their prices even lower together. A panic that has nothing to do with Africa. Money will eventually rush out of that ETF basket. And that selling pressure, it can flow down into actual African bonds inside it, which will lead to pushing their prices even lower together. So maybe weeks later, a country like Zambia or Kenya may go to raise money and discover the price of his own bond has gone up again, not because anything changed in their countries, but because of the mood and the decision being made in Europe. That is a machine that this ETF is going to turn on. In good times, it can make borrowing for African countries cheaper, but the daily judgment on what an African government bond is worth has gained a loud new address, and that address is now sitting in Europe. They can control Africa's market from there. And I keep coming back to very one important question. If this product is so wonderful for Africa, why was no version of it listed in any stock exchange in Africa yet? Why can a trader in Europe buy a slice of Africa's debt with one click? They can't trade it in Africa's exchanges. Think about this. This is my interpretation, and I stand by it. Africa did not gain a new market this week. Africa became a product in someone else's market. That is the real story here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the part of this story that genuinely concerns me more, because Africa already built this kind of thing before, 8 years ago. Back in 2018, the African Development Bank, Africa's own bank, together with MCB Group of Mauritius, they launched the African Domestic Bond Fund, the first of its kind. It was listed on the stock exchange of Mauritius, holding African government bonds, not in dollars, but in African currencies. This version was created in 2018. The bank said it very clearly why they created it: to reduce dependence on foreign currency debt, grow Africa's own bond market, and push financial integration. It still exists, listed in Mauritius and Botswana. So do not let anybody tell you Africa never tried to do this kind of thing that Europe just did. Africa built the African version with African currencies, and they were listed on an African stock exchange, African purpose, and the world did not take it serious. They ignored it. The African Development Bank itself put up to $25 million as anchor investor. And 8 years later, the entire fund is still only about $46 million for a whole continent home currency debt. Then this week, a London version appears, dollars instead of our local African currencies. And suddenly, there is a British government seed money. They are now ready to put in their money because the origin is now from Europe, not from Africa. I don't know if you're getting my point. A giant asset manager is now behind it. And celebration in the financial press, you need to ask yourself why the money and the noise only arrive when it is originating from Europe in their own currency and in their own financial market? Answer that honestly, and you will understand this entire episode. Now, bring in the second story, where the whole picture completed itself and made even more sense. We did a full episode on it days ago, so I will keep it very short. On July 19, in Lungui, Sierra Leone, ECOWAS heads of state reaffirmed that the ECO currency will now be launching next year, which is 2027. They will launch in phases after more than 2 decades of missed deadlines. Now, within days, Guinea became the first member to opt out of this planned launch for next year, keeping their franc it has controlled for more than 66 years, rather than adopting a currency whose rules are still being written as I record this episode. And what are those unwritten rules? 5 of the 12 countries currently inside ECOWAS, they already use the CFA franc, created by France in 1945. In the colonial era, this currency is pegged to the euro to this day with a French guarantee behind it. And another 3 CFA users, the Alliance of Sahel States, they have already left the ECOWAS bloc. Together, they've all decided they are not going to be part of this new ECO currency. In December of 2019, President Emmanuel Macron and President Alassane Ouattara of Ivory Coast, they even tried to rename the CFA franc as the ECO currency while keeping the euro peg. They basically hijacked the very name of the project. The December summit is supposed to settle the central bank, the decision rules, and the first participating countries. This summit is supposed to happen December later this year. But one huge question hangs over all of it. What will anchor this currency? I will tell you how I understand the situation. When the euro peg CFA countries sit at the heart of this project, and the last attempt at an ECO came euro peg from Paris, the one that Macron and Ouattara tried to cook up, until our leaders answer that anchor question very clearly. The handwriting of Europe stays on this project. It is their pet project for West Africa. Guinea has already seen the handwriting, and they have decided they are going to, stay away from this. That decision proves the sovereignty question around this currency is not theoretical. There is European handwriting written all over it. Look at what is happening right now. On the currency side, West Africa pushed towards one currency whose anchor is undecided as of this moment, with the euro peg CFA countries pushing for this. On the debt side, we now have a new fund in London, seeded and funded by the British government, turning African debt into a single product that can be traded in Europe. In our Guinea episode, I asked a very important question. Who will print this ECO currency? This week, the answer became, who prices the debt, Africa's debt? Whoever holds a people's money and their debt, they can control their market. And whoever can control their market can control Africa's future. Now, connect this back to Germany. What happened in February at the Munich Security Conference, that the Secretary of State of America, Marco Rubio, he spoke with open nostalgia about the legacy of the great Western empires. He mourned the decline of the colonial era. And at that meeting, he told European allies that they should not be shackled by guilt over their colonial history. And he tied the security of the West directly to supply chains and critical minerals. Yeah, critical minerals like cobalt, lithium, rare earths, the very things under African soil. And how did Europe receive that awakening? Yeah, Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president, said it in public that she was very much reassured by this speech and listed raw materials among the areas that Europe must now secure from Africa. These guys, they are coming aggressively. They are coming. So when I told you months ago that the agenda had been announced openly, this is what I meant. It will come in different forms, ladies and gentlemen. But I will try my best to be pointing it out anytime they try to come through the back door. And this is the difference between what happened in the 1800s and now. When they came at the time, they came with their gunboats and their soldiers. They sat at the Berlin Conference and carved this continent like a cake on a table. And in 2026, nobody needs a gunboat, a currency arrangement here, a debt product here, Financial power can be built over a continent quietly, cleanly, legally, without a single soldier crossing the sea and firing a shot. And all of this reaches the same three conclusions: what Africa earns, what Africa owes, and what Africa can decide. But I will not leave you in despair, ladies and gentlemen, because in this same period, African countries quietly ran the play in reverse. Let me talk about what is happening in Tanzania. On July 24, at the London Stock Exchange, the first offshore bond ever measured in Tanzanian shillings was listed. About 262 billion shillings. That is roughly $100 million. 5 years, 7.6% interest. Tanzania's finance minister rang the closing bell himself and called it the start of Tanzania's participation in international capital market using their own local currency, its own currency. Now, let me be very clear here, because precision, it is what will protect us in this channel. This bond was not issued by the Tanzanian government itself. It was issued by the IFC, the private sector arm of the World Bank, with the highest credit rating on this planet. The IFC raised the money in London and they passed it in shillings. That is the key point I want to note here. It was done in Tanzanian local currency, and that is why I'm talking about it. Now, they will lend to small and medium businesses. 20% was actually a mark for women-owned businesses. The World Bank estimates to support up to 20,000 jobs. But this is why I am showing you this deal that happened in Tanzania. Ask one question of any cross-border deal: whose currency carries it, and who feels the pain if that currency weakens? In a normal African dollar bond, including every bond in that new London ETF basket that I'm talking about, the African side borrows in dollars. And if the local currency falls, the debt burden explodes. The pain lands in Africa. In this Tanzanian structure, this one that they just launched, the deal is measured in Tanzania's own shillings. The investors